The forgotten Cry Captain, Alina Vasquez, stood on the bridge of the Harmony's edge, watching the stars drift past in the endless black of space. Her ship was small compared to the massive warships that dominated galactic politics, but it served its purpose well. The Harmony's Edge was a research vessel designed to explore the unknown corners of the galaxy and make peaceful contact with new species. Alina had been captain for 8 years now, and she loved her job. Unlike the military vessels that projected power and dominance, her ship carried scientists, doctors, and diplomats. Their mission was simple: learn, help, and build bridges between species. It was work that felt meaningful in a galaxy where too many problems were solved with weapons. Dr. Marcus Chen looked up from his communication station, his dark eyes reflecting the blue glow of his screens. Marcus was the ship's xenobiologist and one of the best alien language experts in human space. He had dedicated his life to understanding how different species communicated, and his work had helped establish peaceful relations with dozens of alien civilizations. "Captain," Marcus called out, his voice carrying a note of curiosity that Alina had learned to recognize. "I'm picking up something unusual." Alina moved to his station, her boots clicking softly on the metal deck. The bridge was quiet except for the gentle hum of the ship's systems and the occasional beep from various instruments. "What kind of unusual, Marcus?" Marcus frowned at his screen, adjusting controls and filters. "It's a distress signal, but it's incredibly weak. Almost like it's been traveling through space for months, maybe years. The signal pattern is unlike anything in our database." Alina felt the familiar spark of interest that came with potential first contact situations. Even after 8 years, the possibility of meeting a new species never lost its excitement. "Can you clean it up?" "I'm trying," Marcus replied, his fingers dancing over his controls. "The signal keeps fading in and out. Whatever is sending it must be very far away, or the transmitter is failing." Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the ship's navigator, looked up from her station. "Captain, we're currently 3 days out from the Kepler research station. Should I plot a course to investigate?" Alina considered the options. The Harmony's Edge was scheduled to deliver supplies to Kepler station, but they weren't in a huge hurry. The station was well stocked and could wait a few extra days if needed. On the other hand, if someone was in trouble and calling for help, every hour might matter. "How far would we need to go to investigate?" Alina asked. Marcus worked at his console for several minutes, triangulating the signal's origin. "Based on the signal strength and degradation, I'd estimate about 2 days at maximum warp. The signal appears to be coming from an uncharted system in the Outer Rim." The Outer Rim was the edge of known space, where few ships traveled and even fewer stayed long. It was a dangerous area, full of asteroid fields, unstable stars, and the occasional pirate base. But it was also where new discoveries were made, where species that had never encountered galactic civilization might be found. "Marcus, any luck identifying the language or species?" Marcus shook his head, looking frustrated. "None of the patterns match anything in our xenolinguistic database. The mathematical sequences suggest intelligence, but the communication method is completely foreign. It's almost like they're using a combination of electromagnetic frequencies and something else I can't identify." Alina made her decision. "Sarah, set course for the signal's origin. Maximum warp." "Aye, Captain," Sarah replied, her hands already working at the navigation controls. "Course laid in. ETA 47 hours. As the Harmony's Edge jumped to warp speed, Alina found herself thinking about the nature of distress calls. In her experience, when someone was calling for help across the vast emptiness of space, they were usually in serious trouble. The fact that this signal had been traveling for so long without response suggested that either no one had heard it, or no one had cared enough to answer. 2 days later, they arrived at a system that wasn't even named on their charts, just designated as UN 7742 in the astronomical database. The system contained a single red dwarf star and several small rocky planets, nothing that would normally attract attention or suggest the presence of life. "Signal is much stronger now," Marcus reported as they dropped out of warp. "And Captain, I'm detecting artificial structures on the third planet." Alina moved to the main view screen, which showed the reddish glow of the dwarf star and the dark silhouettes of the planets. Artificial structures. What kind? Difficult to say from this distance, but they appear to be constructed rather than natural formations. "The signal is definitely coming from the planet's surface. Take us in closer, Sarah." Standard approach pattern. As they moved toward the third planet, more details became visible. The world was mostly rock and ice, with a thin atmosphere that couldn't support most forms of life. But scattered across its surface were structures that were clearly built by intelligent beings. They looked like crystalline domes connected by tubes, creating a network of interconnected buildings that stretched for miles. "Captain," Marcus said, his voice filled with excitement and concern, "I'm receiving a direct transmission. The signal is much clearer now, and I think I'm beginning to understand parts of it." "Put it through the speakers," Alina ordered. What filled the bridge was unlike anything they had heard before. It was a voice, clearly intelligent and speaking with purpose, but the sounds were like music mixed with electronic tones. The rhythm was complex, rising and falling in patterns that almost seemed like singing. Marcus worked frantically at his translation programs, feeding the signal through every linguistic analysis tool at his disposal. Slowly, words began to appear on his screen as the computer attempted to find patterns and meaning. "Help," Marcus read aloud, his voice quiet with awe. "The word that keeps repeating is help, and there's another word that appears frequently. I think it might be a name or species identifier." The transmission continued, and more words became clear. "Dying, ... alone. Forgotten, ... please, ... Alina felt a chill run down her spine. Someone down there was asking for help, and from the sound of their voice, they had been asking for a very long time. "Sarah, scan for life signs on the planet," Alina ordered. Sarah's fingers flew over her controls, directing the ship's sensors toward the surface. After several minutes, her expression grew puzzled. "Captain, I'm only detecting one life sign in all those structures. Just one." The weight of that information settled over the bridge like a heavy blanket. An entire civilization's worth of buildings, but only one person left alive. "Marcus, can you establish two-way communication?" "I think so. The translation program is learning their language patterns quickly. Give me a few more minutes." Alina watched the planet below, imagining what might have happened to reduce an entire civilization to a single survivor. Disease, war, natural disaster, or something else entirely. Whatever it was, one being had been left behind, calling out to the galaxy for help that never came. "Ready, Captain?" Marcus announced. "I can't guarantee perfect translation, but we should be able to communicate basic concepts." Alina took a deep breath. First contact was always a delicate moment, but this situation felt especially fragile. She was about to speak to what might be the last member of an entire species. This is Captain Alina Vasquez of the human vessel. Harmony's Edge, she said clearly, while Marcus worked to translate her words into the alien's language. We have received your distress signal. We are here to help. The response came almost immediately, and even without translation, Alina could hear the surprise and hope in the alien's voice. Marcus's translation appeared on screen. Humans, you came after so long. Someone finally came. Asterisk, yes, we came, Alina replied. What is your name? What happened to your people? There was a long pause before the reply came. I am Zaranine of the Vorthok. I am ... I am the last one. My people have been dying for many cycles, and I have been calling for help. But no one answered. No one cared. Alina exchanged glances with her crew. The pain in Zaranine's voice was unmistakable, even through the translation. We care, Alina said firmly. We're going to help you. Can you tell us what happened to your people? The story that followed broke Elena's heart. The Vorthok had been a peaceful species, living quietly in their crystal cities, studying the stars and creating beautiful art. They had never sought conflict with anyone, never built weapons or tried to conquer other worlds. They had simply existed, happy in their small corner of the galaxy. But then the cosmic radiation had come. It started as a barely detectable increase in background radiation, but it grew stronger over time. The Vorthok scientists discovered that their sun was dying in an unusual way, pumping out deadly radiation that their bodies couldn't process. One by one, her people had sickened and died. Zara 29 had been chosen to send out distress calls to the galaxy, begging for help or evacuation. She had sent messages to the Galactic Council, the Trade Federation, the Krillian Empire, and every other major power she could contact. The responses had all been the same. The Vorthok had nothing to offer in return for help, so no help would be given. The Galactic Council said we were too few and too poor to matter, Zaranine explained, her translated words heavy with old pain. The Trade Federation said we had no resources worth the cost of evacuation. The Krillians said we were weaklings who deserved to die. Everyone turned away. Alina felt anger burning in her chest. How could an entire galaxy turn its back on a dying species just because they had nothing to trade? How long have you been alone, Zaranine? 7 cycles. I watched my parents die. My friends, my mate, everyone I ever loved. I kept sending the distress calls because I promised them I would. Even when I knew no one would come, I kept calling. I couldn't let them be forgotten completely. Alina looked around at her crew and saw her own determination reflected in their faces. Marcus was wiping tears from his eyes, and Sarah was staring at the planet with clenched fists. Zaranine, Alina said, we're going to help you. I don't know how yet, but we're not going to let you die alone. But I am dying too, Zaranine replied. The radiation has made me sick like the others. I have perhaps a few more cycles left, and you are only one small ship. What can you do that the great powers of the galaxy could not? Alina smiled, even though Zaranine couldn't see her. We're humans. We don't give up on people just because they can't pay us back. And we're going to show you that not everyone in this galaxy has forgotten what it means to help someone in need. Before Zaranine could respond, Sarah's voice cut through the conversation. Captain, we've got company. 3 ships just dropped out of warp at the edge of the system. Alina moved to the tactical display. The ships were unfamiliar designs, but their weapons were clearly visible and powered up. Can you identify them? Negative. They're not broadcasting any identification codes, and they're not responding to our hails. Marcus had been monitoring communications, and his face went pale. Captain, I'm picking up transmissions between those ships. They're speaking Krillian, and they're talking about salvage rights and stripping the planet clean. Elena's jaw tightened. Scavengers. The Vorthok had been left to die, but now that they were gone, the vultures were arriving to pick over what remained. How long until they reached the planet? At their current speed, about 6 hours. Alina made another decision that would change everything. Sarah, send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them we need immediate assistance. Send our coordinates and the full situation report. What about Zaranine? Marcus asked. Alina looked at the planet below, where the last Vorthok waited in. Her crystal city, still sending out her calls for help after all these years. We're going down there. If those scavengers want to strip her world clean, they're going to have to go through us first. Asterisk, when humanity rises, the shuttle Compassion descended through the thin atmosphere of the Vorthok homeworld, its heat shields glowing as it cut through the cold air. Captain Alina Vasquez sat in the pilot's seat with Dr. Marcus Chen beside her, monitoring communications. Behind them, Lieutenant Sarah Kim checked their supplies and equipment one final time. The landing site Zara 29 had directed them to was near the largest of the crystal cities. As they approached, Alina could see the beauty of Vorthok architecture, even in its dying state. The crystal structures caught and reflected the dim red light of the dwarf star, creating patterns of color that danced across the landscape like frozen music. But there was something heartbreaking about the empty walkways and dark windows. This had been a living city once, full of beings going about their daily lives. Now it was a monument to a people who had been forgotten by the galaxy. Landing sequence complete, Alina announced as the shuttle touched down on a smooth platform near the city's center. Atmosphere is thin but breathable with suits. Gravity is about 80% Earth normal. They put on their environmental suits and stepped out onto the alien world. The silence was overwhelming. No sounds of life, no movement except for the gentle wind that whispered through the crystal structures. Alina had visited many worlds in her career, but she had never experienced such profound loneliness. The central spire, Marcus said, checking his scanner. That's where Zaranine is waiting. They walked through the empty streets, their footsteps echoing off the crystal walls. Alina tried to imagine what this place had been like when it was alive, filled with the beings who had built these beautiful structures. The Vorthok had clearly been artists as well as engineers. Every surface was decorated with intricate patterns that seemed to tell stories in their flowing lines. The central spire rose ahead of them, a tower of blue crystal that reached toward the red sky. As they approached, a section of the wall simply dissolved, revealing an entrance that hadn't been there moments before. Fascinating, Marcus breathed. Some kind of controlled matter manipulation. They entered the spire and found themselves in a chamber that took their breath away. The walls were covered in moving patterns of light, like living murals that shifted and flowed in response to their presence. And in the center of the chamber, sitting on what appeared to be a throne made of grown crystal, was Zara-9. She was unlike any alien they had encountered before. Her body was humanoid but elongated, with skin that seemed to be made of the same crystal as her city. Light flowed beneath her translucent skin in patterns that pulsed with her heartbeat. She was beautiful and alien and clearly dying. The patterns of light under her skin were dim and irregular, flickering like a candle in the wind. But when she saw them, the light brightened. and Alina heard her voice directly in her mind rather than through the translation device. "You really came," Zaranine said, wonder in her mental voice. "I had almost stopped believing that anyone would care." Alina removed her helmet, finding that the air inside the spire was perfectly breathable. "We care, Zaranine, and we're not the only ones. My people don't abandon those in need." Zaranine rose from her throne, moving with careful grace. Up close, Alina could see the extent of her illness. The radiation poisoning was eating away at her from the inside, but she was fighting it with everything she had. "Your people," Zaranine said. "Humans, I have heard of you, but only in whispers. They say you are young and naive, that you don't understand the ways of the galaxy." "Maybe they're right," Alina replied. "We're new to galactic politics, and we don't always understand why things work the way they do. But we understand right and wrong." Marcus was scanning the chamber with his instruments, his eyes wide with amazement. "Captain, the technology here is incredible. These crystals aren't just decorative. They're some kind of biological-technological hybrid. And the medical applications." Zaranine turned to him with interest. "You study life, human Marcus?" "Yes. I'm a xenobiologist. I study how different species live and adapt. Your people's integration of biology and technology is unlike anything I've ever seen." "My people were healers as well as artists," Zaranine explained. "We learned to grow technology that worked with life rather than against it. We could heal injuries that would cripple other species, extend life far beyond normal limits, even repair genetic damage." Alina felt a chill of realization. "The galactic powers knew about your medical technology, didn't they? That's why they didn't help you. They wanted it for themselves, but they wanted to take it rather than trade for it." Zaranine's light patterns shifted to what Alina somehow knew with sadness. "Yes, they came with offers, but their offers were demands. They wanted our secrets, our knowledge, our cities. They wanted everything, and they offered nothing but the promise not to take it by force." "So you refused," Alina said. "We refused. And so they decided to wait for us to die so they could take what they wanted from our corpses." Sarah's voice crackled through their communicators. "Captain, those scavenger ships are accelerating. They'll be here in 3 hours, not 6. Alina looked around the crystal chamber, thinking fast. "Zaranine, is there a way to protect this knowledge? To keep it safe from the scavengers?" "There is," Zaranine replied. "But it would require trust. Great trust." Before Alina could ask what she meant, Marcus's scanner began beeping urgently. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple warp signatures approaching. The system, big ones." Alina activated her communicator. "Sarah, what's your status up there?" "Captain, you're not going to believe this. It's Admiral Mitchell with half the Terran defense fleet. 12 ships just dropped out of warp, and they're moving to intercept the scavengers." Alina felt a surge of pride in her species. Admiral Sarah Mitchell was one of Earth's most respected military commanders, and she had apparently decided that the situation warranted her personal attention. "This is Admiral Mitchell to Captain Vasquez," came a voice over the communicator. "We received your report and decided to take a closer look. What's your situation down there?" "Admiral, we've made contact with the survivor. The situation is more complex than we initially thought. The Vorthok possess advanced medical technology that could benefit the entire galaxy, but they've been abandoned because they wouldn't let it be stolen." "Understood, Captain. We're currently in a standoff with 3 Krillian salvage vessels. They're claiming salvage rights to the planet, but they don't seem eager to test our resolve." Alina looked at Zaranine, who had been listening to the conversation with growing amazement. Admiral, I recommend we establish a protective perimeter around the planet while we work out a solution. Already in progress, Captain. But Alina, you should know that this is causing quite a stir back home. The Galactic Council is not pleased that we're interfering in what they call natural selection. Alina felt her anger flare again. Natural selection. They let an entire species die, and now they want to call it natural. Zaranine placed a crystal hand on Elena's arm, and Elena felt a strange sense of calm flow through her. Do not let anger cloud your judgment, human Elena. Anger is what drove the galaxy to abandon my people. You must be better than that. You're right, Elena said, taking a deep breath. Admiral, what's our legal standing here? Murky, Mitchell replied. The Vorthok never officially joined the Galactic Council, so technically they're not under Council protection. But they're also not in anyone else's territory, so the salvage claims are questionable at best. Marcus looked up from his scanner. Captain, I'm detecting something else. There's an artificial intelligence in this city, a vast one. It's been maintaining the technology and preserving the Vorthok knowledge base. Zaranine nodded. The eternal memory. It was our greatest creation, a way to preserve our culture and knowledge for future generations. It has been waiting for someone worthy to receive our gift. Gift? Elena asked. The medical knowledge of my people, not to be hoarded or sold, but to be shared freely with all who need it. That is what the eternal memory was programmed to do, but it required someone to prove themselves worthy first. Elena understood. The test wasn't whether we could pay for the knowledge, but whether we would use it to help others. Yes, and you have passed the test, human Elena. Your people came to help one dying alien with no thought of reward. You brought your fleet to protect a world with no strategic value. You have shown that humanity possesses the compassion my people valued above all else. The chamber filled with new light as the eternal memory activated fully. Patterns of information flowed across the walls like living text, and Alina realized she was seeing the accumulated medical knowledge of an entire civilization. This knowledge will be given freely to humanity, Zaranine said, not to be hoarded, but to be shared with all species who need it. Will you accept this responsibility? Alina looked at her crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt in her heart. We accept. What happened next would be remembered as one of the turning points in galactic history, as the eternal memory began transferring its vast database to the human ships. Admiral Mitchell established a permanent human presence in the system. The Krellian scavengers, faced with a full human fleet and the knowledge that their actions were being broadcast across the galaxy, retreated with their claims unfulfilled. But the real change came in the days that followed. Alina stayed with Zaranine as the last Vorthok slowly succumbed to the radiation poisoning that had claimed her people. In her final hours, Zaranine asked Alina to make one more promise. Do not let the galaxy forget us, she whispered, her light patterns growing dim. We were not important to the great powers, but we were here. We lived, we loved, we created beauty. Promise me that will be remembered. I promise, Elena said, holding the crystal hand of the dying alien. Your people will never be forgotten. Zaranine smiled at expression that translated perfectly across species barriers. Then we did not die in vain. The galaxy is a better place because humans are in it. Those were her last words. The light patterns under her crystal skin faded away, and Zaranine joined her people in whatever came after life. But her sacrifice and the sacrifice of her entire species were not in vain. Alina kept her promise. The story of the Vorthok spread throughout human space and beyond. The medical knowledge they had given freely was shared with every species that needed it, saving millions of lives across the galaxy. The Vorthok homeworld became a memorial site, protected by human ships and visited by beings from across the galaxy who came to pay their respects to a people who had chosen to die rather than see their life's work turned into a weapon. And in the halls of the Galactic Council, a new voice began to be heard. Humanity had proven that they were not just another species looking for profit and power. They were something the galaxy had almost forgotten existed, a people who would stand up for the weak, who would help those who could not help themselves, and who would never abandon someone in need. The universe had looked away when the Vorthok called for help, but Earth had stood tall for the weak, and that made all the difference. As Alina stood in the crystal chamber where Zaranine had made her final sacrifice, she felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Humanity was still young in galactic terms, still learning their place among the stars, but they had chosen their path, and it was a path of compassion, courage, and hope. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly as it should be. Asterisk.